Hi guys, and welcome to another live episode of Dial It Up. And today we're going to be looking at, we have 5 new rules articles for the upcoming 2017 rulebook. So we're just going to dive right into that, starting with Article 5. So title of this one, Outwit, Use, and Possess. This is pretty simple. As to what it's going to go over. Again, much like I did last time, I'm not going to actually read out the entire articles for you guys. I do have the rules section linked in down below, so you guys can click on that and look at all the articles they've come out with so far. So this is a pretty big change to Outwit. Outwit is now going to read free, minimum range value 6, choose a power, standard or special, and a target opposing character within range and line of fire. The target can't use the chosen power until your next turn. So it's still a free action. That's one thing. It's still a minimum range of 6. The big thing that comes in here is that you just choose a power, literally any power, to the point where it doesn't even have to be showing on its dial. You just choose a power and say, you can't use that power. Now, we're all really familiar with what can't use means, so you're just not going to use it. The big change about this is that they're just taking away possess. There were only 2 things in the game itself that cared about possesses, and that was Outwit and Wildcard was actually something that you possess the team ability that you were wildcarding. So now we don't have to worry about the difference in the nuance between, can this character use this power? Does this character possess this power? You can only counter this power. They're also taking out the word encountered. So countered isn't a thing anymore. It's just strictly can't use. We've seen this in multiple occasions with Orange Battery, Orange Lanterns, Balls of Fury, Nick Fury. We know what can't use is doing. Now, Outwit is going to do that. So it's going to function the same way that it did before, except you have a much broader range of what you can shut off. Now, you still can't shut off traits, but if there's a standard power within that trait, which is pretty popular, like you see this a lot, common, that's the word I'm looking for. It's pretty common to have a trait be like, this character can use stealth, shape change, and sidestep. So if you're turning off sidestep, or hey, you can't use sidestep, that part of that trait isn't going to work anymore. And if you have an entire trait that is based around a standard power, it's going to shut off the rest of the trait too, because they can't use that standard power. Now, they don't go into it too deep, but we do assume that it's going to work the same way it did before, where if you're shutting off, if you can't use Smoke Cloud, the train will go away, but if you can't use Barrier, it's still going to be there because it's already been activated, sort of thing. They don't get too deep into that. I'm assuming once the rulebook actually comes out, it will get more deep into these triggered events as to if you say you can't use this power, is that going to be a new activation of the power, or if any lingering effects will happen. And then it's just until your next turn. So it's still kind of the basic thing, but the big thing on that is that it is taking away possesses, is taking away countered. It is just going to target that single effect. The next thing that they do introduce with this is protected. So protected is now going to be a key phrase based around keeping you from being affected by certain powers. This is what used to be can't be ignored, can't be countered. We're going to see protected effect. The specific effect can't target or deal damage to this character, and any duration of the specified effect affecting this character expires. Can't be used, doesn't apply to this key phrase. So, excuse me, you can't use protected, if that makes sense. You can't outwit someone's protected power, is basically what they're saying. You can't be like, I outwit protected. that's not something that you can do. Now that is just the generic what protected actually means. We are going to see in this particular case protected outwit. If this is applied to a specific power, the character can still use it even if it's chosen by outwit. Can't be used, doesn't apply to this key phrase. So once again, you can't outwit protected outwit, and you can't outwit the power that is being protected. So it's going to work in the exact same way that can't be countered used to work. But we're going to see it now just condensed down to protected outwit. And then we're going to know what that means. So it's not going to have the whole explanation on the actual character's card. It's just going to say flavor text, stop, click, protected outwit, something like that. The other thing that they touch on here but don't really explain is that apparently combat abilities don't exist anymore. Yeah, they don't explain that. They're just like, yeah, combat abilities aren't a thing anymore. So we still know that combat symbols are a thing, and we know that inherent abilities are going to happen, and symbols are going to mean certain abilities, but combat abilities themselves, that phrase, that terminology is just gone from the game. So combat abilities don't exist, but then they don't actually go into explaining why they don't exist and what they're being replaced with, and are we losing certain symbols? We don't know. That part isn't explained. Yeah, so once again, they're just asking for feedback on it. Any of these, I didn't mention that in the first episode, any of these that, hey, you're like, hey, yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. They're looking for feedback. At this point, they have play tested. It's basically, okay, this is what we want to do. This is the rule book we have written, but we want to see what you guys think about it. And if anybody kind of comes up with good enough feedback, things might get changed, but this is pretty much what they have in mind and where they're going forward. And unless like somebody has a shitstorm over this is how things are going to be. So while this is a really, really big change, that's all for this actual article. So no more can use versus possess. And outwit can now pretty much choose anything it wants, including powers that aren't even showing on the dial. So you can kind of do some forethought if maybe you think a power is going to show up next turn, or if they have a kind of pick a power ability, be like, okay, well, you can pick any power you want except that one. So outwit does get a huge boost here. We're probably going to see a lot more low point outwit characters actually being used on the field than they are right now. Then the next one that came out was objects. This is a very big and long article. So I think the first thing that really comes out of this is ultralight and ultra heavy are going away. I think that's even coming out in the rotation. That's coming out June 1st. We're just not going to see ultras anymore. They were cool. They were kind of a test for certain things that we are going to see in the game. But at this point, the ultra heavies do way more than they were ever supposed to do, and the ultra lights barely get used. So the first big change, other than getting rid of the ultras, is that now every character can pick up a light object, except vehicles. They're not allowed because they don't have hands. So they're not going to... Anyways. So everybody is now going to have an inherent ability called object pickup. Once per move, this character may either pick up one light object holding it, or put down one light object in a square it moves through or adjacent to. So actually from this, the interesting thing about this is that you can do it at any point. Like you could always kind of pick up as you moved along, but you can also drop anywhere you want to go along the way. Now every character is going to get this. I believe they don't mention that. Yeah, it's just all character. Even tinies are now going to be able to pick up lights. And the next thing is that lights aren't going to count as hindering terrain, which is actually really nice, because when you think of the lights that have come out, they're just, it's not, people aren't going to get stopped by those. They're not big enough to stop a person from charging through them. So the next inherent ability that they do introduce, because we're not going to see this as hindering terrain, is an ability called Hide. At the beginning of your turn, this is underlined so that you know which phase that this is happening in. If a heavy object is in this square and this character has standard or tiny, you may place a hindering terrain marker here. At the beginning of your next turn, or immediately when no heavy object is in this square or no character occupies the square, remove the marker. You do not need to physically place the marker. The heavy object serves as a reminder. It's an interesting choice that they went ahead and said, hey, place a hindering terrain marker there so that you know there's a hindering terrain bonus and stealth can work off of this, but you don't have to put the marker down because you know you're going to have the heavy object. It seems overtly complicated for what they want to do, rather than just saying this heavy object counts as hindering terrain. I don't know why they went that way. It just seems easier. Like, the object's already there. Why talk about the hindering terrain marker at all? Unless for, like, the only thing I could think of is that there's a plan for a character in the, or a map in the future that says you can't place hindering terrain markers. Like, even that wouldn't make sense. Like, nothing about that really makes sense, but hey, they're going ahead with this. They're saying basically all they want to say from this, and all this really does say, with all of its excess wording, despite how much they want to condense things, is that if there's you can hide inside a heavy object. So heavy objects are going to do what all objects, except for ultralight, used to do, where you're going to get the hindering terrain bonus while being shot at, and if you're stealthy, you can hide inside it. That's basically all they're saying. Now, this only applies to heavy objects. So lights, everybody can pick up. Heavy objects, you can hide inside. The big thing of why they want to do it this way, or why basically it only ever counts on your opponent's turn, is that this is going to be a hindering terrain marker, so long as that heavy object is there, is because they don't want objects to stop movement anymore. There are so many times that when objects are actually being used, that they're being used to block doorways or to block stairwells or to just mess with the map itself and movement of certain characters, which that was apparently never the intention of objects. Having them as hindering terrain was intended like for stealth or for getting extra bonus, that you're kind of weaving and hiding behind these things and it's harder to shoot at you. It was never meant to mess with the map. So what they want to do in more flavorful and getting towards this more simplified rules is to just cut down on that. And now characters can walk past, walk over, walk through objects. Now objects aren't going to block doors anymore. They're not going to block stairwells anymore. They're just going to be there to either be used in an attack or to hide in a heavy object on your opponent's turn. Now, the hide, like I said, is an inherent ability that everybody but vehicles will have. They do stress that it's just characters and not vehicles. I guess the vehicle doesn't want to hide behind the sentinel arm. I don't know. Is there anything? And then they go on and to just kind of say everything that I just said here. The other thing that did get added into this article, because since they're talking about the fact that every character except vehicles can pick up light object, they did have to add something to super strength, and that is that super strength creates knockback. So now anytime somebody with super strength makes an attack, their attacks generate knockback. Now it is just says knockback in bold. Anytime we have something in bold in capital letters, that is going to be a key phrase that they are using to reference something in the rule book, where you don't have to spell out the entire ability and just have the name of the ability. So knockback is now the key phrase for saying that attacks made by this character create knockback. Now that's really interesting too, because it's not just close combat attacks. Generally, characters with super strength don't have great range, but if you have a character like Shazam or Superman who can do both long attacks and short attacks, all of their attacks cause knockback. So causing knockback is a really fun thing. And then, of course, super strengths are the only characters that can pick up heavy objects. So everybody gets light, but only super strength characters get heavy objects. Now, it's still going to do the same thing they did before, where a light object added 1 to your damage and a heavy object added 2 to your damage. That part isn't changing. Although taking out the ultra heavies mean that we're not really going to get a huge boost. We're not getting that +3 to our damage anymore. We're not getting a Superman that's going to hit for 9. Casey Superman. Yeah. But the big thing that they wanted to do here with super strength and knockback was being like, hey, this character who's really, really super strong can just knock you into a wall. And it's also going to be very fun. Now, one thing on this that I will say strategy-wise with these new rules, because everybody's like, super strength just isn't that cool anymore. If you can think strategically enough with the fact that you're going to cause knockback with the super strength, and outwit can affect abilities that aren't showing on the dial yet, and attack damage is going to happen separate of knockback damage, you might be able to turn off some future damage reducers to make sure that knocking that character into that wall is really going to do them damage, or knocking them off a building. You never know. Jason's dancing in the background.
You put the Wii U on my chair.
So yeah, comboing super strength and outwit might be a thing now, guys. So that was that article, and that one was strictly just about objects. So we're going to move on to the next one, and this is going to talk about more inherent abilities and how carry changes. Now, this one has a lot of reading, and when this one first came out, it personally for me raised a lot more questions than it answered. So I apologize to you guys, but this one we don't get a lot of information out of, despite how much information is actually in this article. So we're going to start with the fact that all characters are going to get basic carry. Now, they did kind of introduce us with the size rules, and that everybody was allowed to carry a character smaller than them, but now it's just going to kind of meld that all together. So basic carry is now before beginning movement, you may choose one adjacent friendly character of smaller size that isn't a vehicle or holding an object. If you do, modified speed -1 for each character chosen for this move. When movement ends, place the chosen character adjacent if possible. If you do, the chosen character can't be given a costed action this turn and has been carried. So that sounds pretty similar to what we had with carry. The big thing on that is that it doesn't reference the size of the dial. It doesn't reference combat symbols. It doesn't reference the things that you can't carry. So it just says as long as the character is smaller, go ahead, carry it. Now, when they did do the size change, anytime you did have a character smaller than you, you ignored their combat symbols. So that isn't really new, but there's still so much on here that it doesn't say you can't carry these certain characters. So there is just a sidebar. Now, I haven't mentioned it yet, but this sidebar section is something that is going to show up in the actual rulebook itself. If you remember the rulebook that we have right now, there would be like little things off to the side that say tip, and they'll be like, hey, this is how this rule actually works within the game itself. So they have a sidebar here for each character chosen. Normally, basic carry only lets you carry one character, so this is just a -1 to speed. So everybody who is going to carry is going to have -1 to speed. Now that is different from the current size rule one where you're carrying anybody tiny at no change to your speed. And then basic carry itself used to be -2. But passenger, which we know from vehicles, the little person symbol, or other effects may allow more than one character to be chosen to carry. A second sidebar on this was when you choose to carry, at the end of movement, if you can't place the chosen character, you will still have modify your speed -1 and can't have picked up an object. But the chosen character stays where it began and not considered to have been carried for any effect. Another sidebar, you may move 0 squares and carry an adjacent character by placing them into a different adjacent square. Now that last one was something that we could always do with carry, so that's not anything new. The one in the middle there is, I don't even know why they, like, I guess it's to cover corner cases, it's to help with new characters, but basically what they're trying to say is that when you carry, you are going to map out your movement. You're going to say, okay, this guy is moving there. And then once you've determined where you're moving, then you're going to be like, okay, so this guy got carried with him. What they want to do with this is eliminate the floating character, the character that is off the map, but not off the map, just not in the described square and all of that fluff. They want to get rid of all of that. So instead of having a character kind of floating on the map, that character stays where it is until the character carrying determines which square he has moved to, and then the guy just kind of teleports to next to him and be like, okay, now he's been carried there. But because he's doing that kind of teleporting thing, they're like, okay, but if there's no squares that he can be legally placed into, he just wasn't carried, but you still have to map out your movement first, so you always get -1. I can't think of a situation where you would have a character map out his full movement and then not have a square that your carried character could legally be placed in. It just seems so weird that they have to point that out. Like, I can't. The scenario boggles my mind. But they've put it in there just in case it ends up happening. So next they go into what passenger is actually going to be. Now, passenger is going to be the little symbol and then X. X is going to mean how many people they can actually carry. So we already have characters right now that will carry more than one character. We also know with this passenger ability, we have this with the vehicles, and that's how many characters the vehicle can carry that is not their pilot. So passenger X means this character can use the basic carry ability to carry up to X characters that are either the same size but don't have the flight symbol or are a smaller size. So this is the only reference to not being able to carry a character based on a combat symbol. So basic carry always allows you to carry somebody smaller, not caring about combat symbols. The passenger, which is going to be something like granted by flight or by special ability, and they say you can't carry other flyers. That's always something that, well, not always. This was something that was introduced really, really early in on the game, that flyers couldn't carry flyers. So that's not really anything new here. But once again, we're not seeing any restriction on multi-base characters, of duo symbol characters, of transporter characters, that huge list of symboled characters that weren't able to be carried before. It's not there anymore, and it doesn't get referenced. So then it goes on to say passenger X may be either printed on a character's base or granted by an effect. Bases are going to get really cluttered soon. I don't know how they're going to go forward with that, unless it's a character of, like, I don't know where they want to put that symbol on a character's base. Characters with multiple passenger symbols can carry as many as their highest number allows, unless one of the symbols is passenger 0. Okay. So this just means what we're likely going to see out of this is if we get a big character that has more than one dial. Like the Skull Ship has 2 dials. The old Colossals had like 4 or 5 dials. So when we have multiple dials, you may get multiple numbers. You basically go with the highest number unless any one of them says 0. If there's at least one of those 4 or 5 dials that says 0, you can't carry anyone. A character holding an object has passenger 0. So regardless of any other source of carry that you are getting, either through flight or your inherent basic carry, if you are holding an object, you don't get to carry people anymore. This is a big change. You could always before carry a character and carry an object, but couldn't carry a character that was carrying an object. Maybe it's that last part that I added in that they really want to kind of take away any stacking things, trying to make it as simple as possible. I don't really see why we can't carry an object and a person, but
new super strength rules where you can't, everybody can carry lights. Does it make sense for a flyer with a light to be carrying somebody?
Yeah, I don't know if you guys caught that with Jason. He was saying that with now everybody having the ability to carry an object, it might not make as much sense to, have a manhole cover in one arm and a teammate in the other arm. It only really gets finicky when you try to bring it into logic as if the character is carrying somebody smaller. So if you have Ant-Man riding on your shoulder and you're holding a gumball machine, doesn't seem too taxing on you, but for the sake of actually making the rules simple, it's in there. So it's just something we're going to have to get used to with that getting there. There is also in parentheses here, and can't later pick up an object in the same move that they've decided to carry per the object rules. So if you're holding an object, you can't pick up a person. If you're carrying a person, you can't pick up an object. Pretty simple there. The sidebar here is note that modifying speed -1 for each carried character is limited by the rule of 3 to -3. Now that makes sense as the rule of 3, so long as it's not getting changed with the new rules, only ever affected combat values, and speed is a combat value, so it can never be dropped more than -3 or increased more than +3. Sidebar, the rule of zeros tells us that a character with passenger 0 can't carry. That's going to be a new golden rule. We don't have a rule of zeros right now. We do know that combat values can't be dropped below 0, but there was never a golden rule called rule of zeros, so that might just be further clarified in the rulebook once it comes out. And then the final sidebar here is older game elements that may reference the carry ability. This is assumed to be passenger 1 unless the effect specifies a different number of characters. So this is the first time that we've actually seen any of these reference an older game elements. So it does seem like they are going to take into effect some characters, older characters, how these rules are going to affect the characters that we already have in the game. And then they go on to say that the wing symbol is now going to look like flight, passenger 1. So it lets you know that along with flight, which will give you a whole bunch of improved movement, you're have a passenger of 1. So being able to fly, you're able to carry 1 character. Now that being said, is when you are a flyer, we're no longer going to be able to use flight carry and basic carry. So the smaller character and the big character is not something that we're going to do. It was only something that was introduced in the new size rules, and with Tiny, you could always do that with Tiny. But once they broadened that, it was used a lot more. But at this point, with these new rules going forward, we won't be able to carry a Tiny and carry a person, a regular person, standard size person as well, unless you have passenger 2 or 3 or 4. And then it says that flight, of course, is itself, and that includes improved movement, ignore hindering, ignore elevated, ignore outdoor blocking, and move through characters. So all of these, the basic carry, the flight, the wing symbol, all of that will actually show up in the pack itself like it is right now. So it goes on to talk about inherent abilities themselves. So inherent abilities is going to be an entire section in the rulebook and should look like, pending any updates or any changes from now and when this actually gets released. Inherent abilities are abilities that every Heroclix character has. These abilities are always available unless an effect says you can't use them, or potentially the actions or attacks or other effects that they consist of. Sidebar, some of them have an if at their beginning, and if you don't meet that requirement, the ability won't do anything. So we have basic move action, move up to your speed value. Basic close, make a close attack. Basic range, make a range attack. So those are just something that, like, we've always had those. That's how you play Heroclix. Move, attack. Basic carry, we just went over. These are the new ones. Close, destroy. Close. If this character's damage value is 3 or more, destroy an adjacent piece of blocking terrain or KO an object in this square or an adjacent square. This isn't an attack. And then it says the exact same thing, but with range destroy. Sidebar, these two actions are known as the destroy actions. So it's not an attack. We've always known that. But the big thing with this is destroying objects or destroying a wall or blocking any piece of blocking terrain. Making those actually their own specific actions means we're not going to see them comboing. We're not going to get a flurry to hit a character and punch a wall. Now, it didn't work with energy explosion because you couldn't target a piece of terrain and a character at the same time. But we're not going to see any character powers or standard powers combine with destroying objects. You actually have to specify that your action is going towards destroying an object. They did this on purpose so that, it doesn't combo with it and it doesn't cause any more confusion as to, well, if I have this power and I can do this, can I attack a character and then do this and attack a wall? There were a lot of questions like that, and this kind of just takes those questions away. The 4 inherent abilities below all involve interaction with objects other than destroying them. Vehicles can't use any of the 4 abilities below. So we already know this. The vehicles just aren't going to be able to use objects at all. It makes a lot of sense. Object pickup. Once per move, this character may either pick up one light object holding it or put down one light object in the square it moves through or adjacent to. And we already touched on that one. And then close object action. Close. If this character is holding an object, make a close attack and modify damage +1 if the object is light, or +2 if the object is heavy. Immediately after the attack resolves, KO the object. So this is something that we've always been able to do in the game. Light objects are +1 to the damage. Heavy objects are +2 to the damage. They also go on to do the range action with it. Range, minimum range 6. So this is going to be flat. Throwing an object is 6 range. Before, it used to be range based on the size of the lights. I believe were 6 and heavies were 4. Ultralights were 8 and ultra heavies couldn't be thrown. Anyway, so range minimum 6. If this character is holding an object, make a range attack targeting a single character that, instead of normal damage, deals 2 damage if the object is light or 3 damage if the object is heavy. Immediately after the attack resolves, KO object. Now, this is a good way to get 3 damage out of your object. Just throw a heavy object. To add, it's not going to add to your flat damage, so you're not going to get your 4 damage plus the 2. It's just a strict 3 damage, but hey, it's a good way to get 3 damage. Sidebar, these 2 actions are known as the object actions. Effects looking for an object attack identify when a character makes an attack using either of these actions. So again, like the object destroy, making objects like an object attack being its own action means it's not going to combo with special abilities. So basically, you're really just, you've got your heavy, with your heavy objects, you've got super strength to go with it, but you're not going to add any special powers to it. It's supposed to simplify it and cut down on the amount of finicky questions when you start trying to combine objects with powers. And you also don't have to worry too much about the rule of 3 when you're only adding an object to your damage. You might have a perplex or 2, but you don't have to worry about too many other modifications that are coming from any special powers that you have. And then, of course, there's hide as well, which we already touched on earlier. Sorry, I got lost in what they were trying to talk about here. Yeah, so they're saying that they want to make these basic actions because it's harder for newer players. They say here, we found that newer players are often understandably confused by the difference between range actions and range attacks, and similarly close and move. While capitalizing range, we talking about actions should help. One thing that proved particularly confusing was the way we formatted some standard powers like penetrating psychic blast. So this just goes on to saying how they're just going to clean up language, make things a lot easier for the newer players, or even some current players, as to because this game has evolved and morphed and just kind of mutated over the last 15 years. Keeping the language consistent was actually really hard for them to do, because a lot of things that were made years ago just never got touched or never got updated. So language that was used long ago isn't something that we use anymore, or we say it better. So this is just going to be blanket reset on how we say everything. So what they're saying here is that when we talk about when making a ranged action, make a range attack, stuff like that. So they're saying that penetrating psychic blast is going from what it used to say, which was give this character a ranged combat action. Damage from this attack is penetrating damage. Now, we all know that when you make your ranged combat action, you get a ranged combat attack. But that wasn't necessarily inherent to newer players when you're teaching this game. So now they're going to change that to range, make a range attack that deals penetrating damage. So by saying that you're actually making a range attack that's dealing penetrating damage, instead of saying range action, this attack is penetrating damage, it basically just cleans it up, makes it easier for the newer players. I just kind of rambled, and I need to take a drink here. Sorry. But yeah, so they're just talking about how they're, by making sure that they kind of call out what action it is and then say what the action does, it helps people understand what is actually going on there. So the next article is another really big change. So this one here, Rules Article 8, talks about hypersonic speed and pulse wave. Now they do go on to say how hypersonic speed was one of the harder abilities to try and simplify to fit to the rules and still make it the powerful power that it was. And the problem is that the way that hypersonic speed functions is that it breaks almost every rule of the game to make this power function. You are moving almost up to your full speed. You are making attack somewhere in the middle of that movement, and you're carrying a person, but you're not putting them down while you're making the attack, and it just gets a whole lot of complication in it. Now, for some older players, it's not as confusing, but for other players, it's really confusing when you're trying to tell them what they can do and what they can't do and what combos with it and doesn't combo with it, and trying to explain to people how hypersonic speed interacts with shape change, and watch the confusion flow over them. So basically what they go on very long-winded saying is that there's a lot of things that they tried to make this work, and this eventually is boiled down to what they can do here. So the first thing that they have added in is that the breakaway +2 is static. which is all just fantastic. You don't have to be using hypersonic speed to get that breakaway, which is great because sometimes you just want to move. And being able, it also makes me really kind of hopeful for other abilities that give you breakaway bonuses or bonuses to your movement, that they'll be static. Leap climb, come on. Anyway, so you're going to get +2 to your breakaway regardless, whether you're actually making the hypersonic speed action or not. This character, if it has hypersonic speed showing, it gets +2 to its breakaway. The next thing is that there was a improve movement symbol that only hypersonic speed used. I didn't even know this. I didn't realize that that symbol was only ever used for hypersonic speed and nothing else. And that is just the 2 circles. Now, what that had meant was that while you are moving, you don't have to stop when you move adjacent to characters. You still have to break away normal, but if you're already moving, you can kind of just zip around characters. Now, because this is the only power to actually use this, they're just taking that symbol out and taking the other symbol, which is the 2 circles with the arrow straight through it, and it's going to be called Improve. Adjacent time to be hard to figure out how to weave around a character, but now you can just fly right over them or run right through them. When you even think about it, the comic or animated or even live action, if you've seen the Flash or Superman or Quicksilver move, they're not trying to find a way to weave around people. They're basically just zipping right through, and people don't even notice that they're there. So this is going to be a lot more indicative of what what a speedster is actually doing when they're moving around characters. And it also takes out a TZ's power that, is underused and unnecessary. And then we're going to get into the meat and bones of what hypersonic speed now does. So hypersonic speed, breakaway +2, power, half range, improve movement pass, passenger 0, move, then make an attack, then move up to your speed value minus the number of squares just moved. So, still half range, which is great because giving full range to hypersonic speeders is a bad idea. We have the new improved movement, and now we're seeing passenger 0. Now, we just talked about what passenger 0 means when you're doing your hypersonic speed action, you don't get to carry anymore. So, boo, but it makes a lot of sense. And then you move, then you make your attack, then you move whatever movement you had left. So it's still in spirit what hypersonic speed's doing, but now you're not breaking the rules anymore. Now you are moving, you're attacking, and then you're moving away. You're still going to have to break away when you're in there anymore. Now we don't really care about plasticity. It's not going to stop you because you're still going to move in, make your attack, move away. It's going to cancel out your +2 to breakaway, so it just becomes a normal breakaway. But hey, hypersonic speed and plasticity, not a bad matchup anymore. The big thing here is that it's now going to be 2 separate moves. So the potential for up to 2 different breakaway rolls. You can't carry anybody anymore. We do know that because of the way that objects are going to work now, you're not going to be able to smack somebody with an object in the middle of hypersonic because that's its own action, and this is just granting you an attack. So it does kind of bring down the power or the potency of, say, Casey Shajam or Casey Superman, but those characters are only going to be around for another year, and if we're lucky, these rules are going to go on for a really long time. So, and with these in place, we're now going to get hypersonic speed characters that have these rules in mind, and probably won't be coming with super strength, or will have super strength on parts of their dial where they don't have hypersonic speed. So there's been a lot of kind of panicking, I guess. The end is near over this, but when it comes down to it, it's a much simpler change. It's a big change, so it is going to take getting used to, and there are some current characters that it's really going to affect. But it should be good going forward. The next thing that they touch on is Pulse Wave. Pulse Wave has not changed. It's being reworded to fit with the new rules, but nothing fundamentally has changed about it. They took one thing away, and is probably the best thing they could have taken away from it. So Pulse Wave now reads range, half range, improved targeting, ignore characters, and may make ranged attacks while base. Other characters within range can't use powers or abilities for this action. Make a range attack targeting all characters, at least one of which must be opposing. Within range and line of fire, using their printed... Why is the comma there? That's a weird place to put a comma. Sorry. Within range and line of fire, using their printed defense values. If more than one character is targeted, each hit character is dealt 1 damage instead of normal damage. So, like I said, functionally, Pulse Wave is going to work the exact same way it did. By adding in the improved targeting there, now we don't have to say they're going to make a ranged attack, even if they're adjacent to a friendly character. Now we have symbols for that. We've had symbols of that for a while. This should have been added in 2013. And then the interesting thing on this is that other characters within range can't use powers or abilities for this action. We're not drawing lines of fire that are ignoring anything. We're also not ignoring anything. It's can't use. We're getting rid of the confusing terminology of ignore. We're not going to see that anymore. It's just we're going to use a blanket can't use. No more countering, no more ignoring. Just can't use it. So much easier than trying to explain the difference between ignore and counter and can't use and possess and can use. Anyways, I'm rambling. And then you're going to make the range attack targeting all characters. It also is based on their printed values. So now we don't have to worry about if the character is not in range, but they use perplex, or they're adjacent to somebody with defend who's not in range and they're replacing their defense. None of that. It's just defense values, can't use powers, everything. And then we still have the single target Pulse Wave, and if there's more than one character, you're only doing 1 damage. So like I said, functionally, Pulse Wave is working exactly the same way it did. The only changes is to make sure that the terminology matches up to the new terminology of the rulebook. Now, I did mention that one thing has been taken away from Pulse Wave, and that is the area of effect. Trying to explain the area of effect of Pulse Wave, because it is something outside of the range value, outside of replace and modify, trying to calculate your range, because you had to calculate your range. So you did your replace and modify. And then you halved it for your AoE. No more AoE. It's done. No more area of effect, which hopefully this means we're not even going to see an area of effect for energy. I cannot wait until we see what energy explosion looks like. So that was Pulse Wave. Does the same thing. It's cleaned up. It's prettier. It's more functional words-wise. So hopefully it won't have as many, but it's Pulse Wave, so it's still going to be like half of the win questions is going to be regarding Pulse Wave. And then, of course, we're going to have protected Pulse Wave. If this applies to a power or ability, the character can use that during the character can use that effect during Pulse Wave. Can't be used, doesn't apply to this key phrase. So again, we're seeing this in place of this power can't be ignored. So we're just going to have that key phrase, protected Pulse Wave. The final article, and this one actually came up today, is another standard power that is actually getting a functional change, much like Hypersonic Speed did. Now, this article is only talking about mind control, so they do talk about it for a while, and they were saying that this is a power that they had another hard time trying to figure out how to make it the same, make it adhere to the new rules without too hard functioning. Now, it's funny that they had mentioned when they all started this that they didn't want to rebalance the standard powers just yet, and how they were going to reassess how standard powers were going to work in the game and change some here and there. They're changing a lot of standard powers after having said they're not going to change standard powers. There's a little funny thing there. Okay, so mind control is now going to read close/range, minimum range value 4. Make a close/range attack. Instead of normal damage, a hit character halves speed and becomes friendly to your force, and in either order may move and or make an attack. Then it reverts forces. After resolutions, deal this character 1 feedback damage if all hit characters' total point value is 150 points or more. It functionally works the same way, but it cuts down what you can do once you have mind controlled someone. So still minimum range of 4. It's still either a range attack or a close attack. Now, this is something that's interesting that I didn't actually pick up until I just read it again here. It says instead of normal damage. This no longer says this is an attack that deals no damage. We might finally get rid of the finicky, no damage, can't deal damage thing where you deal damage with critical hits, but you can't deal damage. It was a thing about incapacitate that made a lot of confusion. Didn't make any sense, and I'm happy to see it gone from mind control. Hopefully that means it'll be gone from incapacitate. And now we're seeing instead of normal damage, the friendly character is now or the opposing character becomes friendly as part of your force. Now they have cut down from can be given a free action to do anything that they can do to being, hey, this character can now move and attack or attack and move. That's it. That's all mind control is doing now, which essentially is what a lot of people use mind control for. Now, that's not to say that we didn't use mind control for anything else, because there was a lot of standard powers that you got access to. So there was a lot of different strategies that came out of using mind control. But the bare bones of it was when mind control was conceived, what they wanted mind control to originally do was, I want to take control of your character and use that character to hit one of your other characters really hard. Now, the really hard part might not come in depending on the stats of that actual character, but they want us focusing more on the stats rather than the finicky of what happens if I do this, and if I have a special power that creates a bystander token, or if this does this and this does this, how is this gonna? All of that is gone. Once again, I'm pretty sure this is about like the 5th time I've done that whole weaving thing. Is that the main objective here is to take out all of these finicky corner case weird interactions and make you more focused on the game itself rather than having a giant stack of erratas and clarifications next to you every time you play. So it, you get your move and attack, or attack and move, and then it reverts forces. After resolutions, you deal feedback damage. Now, this was something that we actually saw a couple of sets ago, where they acknowledged that feedback damage was a thing. There was a mind controller that didn't take feedback damage, and it was a big thing for me because it was like, hey, look, they're actually using that phrase. It's a phrase, they even mention it in the article itself, that it is a phrase that players have been using for years. That's just what we called the damage you got from mind control was feedback damage. So now it's nice to actually see that in the rules. So that's still in there. So functionally, mind control is going to work the same way. Little things have been tweaked, and what you get to do with the character once you have it has changed, possibly for the better. I mean, before you were limited to what was on the character's dial. Now you do get a move out of it. That being said, you might still possibly have to break away depending on where that character is placed, because at the time of moving, they are friendly to your force and not friendly to your opponent's force. So there could be a breakaway in there. But just because you're not able to make any actions from that character's dial doesn't mean you're completely taken away from that dial. If the character has passive abilities, you're still going to be able to access those. So if they have plasticity, if they have hypersonic speed, you'll get their breakaway bonus. If they have any improved movements or improved targeting, you're going to get those bonuses. And if they have any passive abilities, fingers crossed that these still work the way that they did, like precision strike, you're still going to get access to that because that's not based on actually being given actions. That's just when this character is attacking, do this. So it's not a complete blank slate, depending on how other things are changed and what comes out of that. But it kind of breaks it down to the bare bones. Hey, this is what we want to focus on with this power. That being said, it does change a lot of the strategy behind mind control and who you might end up mind controlling, because you're always going to get that move out of it. I mean, if you fail your breakaway, you fail your breakaway. But mind control now gives you that move. Every character now has move and attack. You might actually want to mind control that thug and smack somebody else with it. It's not just tracking down someone that has charge or has hypersonic, and you can actually functionally do something out of this. It allows you to do a little bit more, and it changes the way you're actually going to approach using mind control. I don't think there's anything else that they actually bring up. I think the only thing out of this article that surprised me was that they were saying that mind control is the second most asked about power, standard power on the win. I wouldn't have even thought about that. So yeah, those are the articles that we have so far, and I'm still excited for all of it. A lot of big changes, a lot of standard powers are getting tweaked. I like the changes so far. Hypersonic speed is probably going to be the most affected, I guess, strategy-wise, because you now have to think about how you're doing your hypersonic speed. You can't smash with an object anymore. You're not bringing somebody along with you. So, I think that would be the most effective of the ones so far, but out of everything, I'm really enjoying the way that this is going. Like, I'm really looking forward to, like, Heroclix 2.0 or whatever we want to call it once these rules are in place and this new game that we're getting out of it. It's still the base game that we've essentially been playing for the last 15 years, even with all of the changes that have happened. But it's the little things. It's like the small evolution. And a lot of it is changes that probably should have been done a while ago, that we're finally seeing in place, and we're happy to see in place. So now that we have looked at all of the articles, we do have the live chat going. I know I didn't mention it before, but it is there for you guys. I'm going to go to any questions that we did have. So we had one from Thomas this afternoon. Does the change to hypersonic speed to involve two separate movements affect when actions resolve effects? For example, if I have lowest lane with hypersonic, he says just go with it, and a Titano, what does Titano get to do and when? So it's going to be similar to how charge and running shot worked, where it's an embedded action. So even though you are moving twice, if you have something that works after actions resolve, it's going to be after all of those actions resolve. So it'll be after the move, the attack, and the second move. So all of that is still considered the hypersonic action. Now, I'm not going to pull it up, but I know that Titano basically can move anytime that Lois moves. But I think his is after actions resolve. So if she moved, stopped, and moved again, that's still she moved, his thing triggered, so he gets to move. So when you're looking for something at action after actions resolve, you have to look at after the whole entire thing is done, which actually kind of reminds me that I hope they clean up the language on flurry. I think they did. I'll have to look after that.
Close make two attacks.
Yeah, so they cleaned up the language on that, because flurry used to read after the first action resolves, give a second attack. But then they decided to make it embedded regardless of how it was actually worded, which made Michelangelo?
Yep.
Yeah, Michelangelo difficult when he first came out because it was like, well, he puts the token on after actions resolve, and Flurry says that you resolve your action and then make a free attack. So it's nice to see that they did clean up the action, the language there. Okay. Do you think modern figures will be errata like Proteus to add protected outwit to the last Clix defense power? Yes. I do foresee them actually not even erratating specifically Proteus, but stop, because Proteus does have the stop key phrase. I do foresee them putting an errata in for stop itself to say stop, protected outwit, protected pulse wave. That's pretty much what stop does right now, so we're gonna see that. If you pick a power that grants powers, you can't use any of the powers contained in that power through it. But if you have one of the secondary powers in a different way, you can still use it. Yes. Okay. trying to understand what Thomas was trying to say there. So basically, when you have outwit, you can target special powers. I didn't actually go over this when I talked about outwit. So you would target the actual name of the special power and say you can't use that. But if that special power was, hey, you have sidestep, flurry, and exploit, and you have a different source of exploit, you can use exploit because he didn't outwit your exploit. He outwitted everything that came in that special power. So yes, that is something that I didn't mention with explaining the outwit. So you can outwit any standard power or any special power, but if you're outwitting a special power, it's just the white power you're outwitting, not everything that's inside it. So if they have another source of the standard powers, they can still use those. Yeah, outwit is very similar to what Nick Fury does. KC Shazam becomes relevant. Okay, so he kind of loses some of his potency, but that's true. No longer searching for crazy ways to get Force Blast to work with. I guess that is something, because Super Strength now does just give you knockback regardless. So if you do have a Super Strength Hypersonicer, they can't use their object during Hypersonic, but they can still Force Blast. So yeah, there's nothing really wrong with running up to somebody, punching them into a wall, and walking away. It also helps with your breakaway. You don't have to break away from someone that you knocked away from you. Yes, Jason is just chilling in the background. Jason is actually hanging out, playing on the Wii U, because it's the tablet controller. He can just kind of chill out there. Everybody says hi, Jason. He's waving. Yeah, no more charge exploit object. Charge exploit is probably still going to be a thing, hopefully. We haven't seen exploit yet, but objects are just going to be their own thing, not comboing with standard powers. It's, it's little from column A, little from column B. It's rough to see in some ways, but it's better in other ways. Especially with me, where lately over the last few years, I've been a judge first and then a player. These changes make me really, really excited as a judge, because I have to do less of my job. Or at least makes my job a lot less complicated when I don't have to look up how all these crazy things interact with each other. I apologize for any breakups. If you guys notice that in the archives, I'm not sure at what point I broke up, but that could also just be the way that I talk. Okay, so this is something that has come up with a lot of people, and seems like they didn't have the proper foresight with it. And that is, what I don't understand is, why did they launch Sidekick Knights before these changes take effect? I feel like Sidekick Knight was something either new that they really, really wanted to push out fast, or that the ball was rolling for a while and then they're like, hey, we're going to do this. And then another department was like, hey, we're bringing out the rules. And it was like, oh no. Okay, Jason just whispered in the background that the rules don't change enough for it to be a problem. It all depends on who you're teaching, really. The Sidekick Knights are really just so we can get players out to the stores. We want to bring people in. And it doesn't really matter at what point we bring them in. Yeah, it's going to be rough if we're like, hey, check out this game, but don't try to learn the rules too much because a lot of things are going to change in a couple of months. Just enjoy yourself. It all depends on how you approach it. It does seem a little nearsighted that, they didn't line up Sidekick Knight with the new rules. But if we're lucky, we might just see multiple rounds of Sidekick Knight, or that Sidekick Knight is just something that's just permanently part of the game now, where, hey, once a month, let's do a Sidekick Night. It might just end up being a straight template in the actual win for judges to just be like, hey, I'm going to do a Sidekick event, which honestly would be awesome. And I hope that's something that they do going forward, is that they're just going to be like, let's just keep making Sidekick Nights. Let's just keep going with this idea. Let's bring more and more people. I'm hoping that is something that they still do after the rules changes. Me and Jason were actually talking about bringing our eldest out to a game and having her learn the new rules on a Sidekick Night, because with everything really kind of being condensed and straightforward, it would be a lot easier for her to learn the game after these rules changes than in the convoluted state that it's in right now. A question that came up at the WK over the weekend: what about hypersonic character that can't ignore hindering attacks from a hindering square? What is the remaining speed? What it normally would be. Hindering square, not an object. So
if they don't ignore hindering,
they're going to stop the movement, which now doesn't matter because you're going to stop and make the attack anyway. So, don't walk through hindering before you get to the person you want to attack. And then when you're making your second movement, it is a second separate move. As I mentioned, with needing to break away from the character that you're attacking, if you're adjacent to them, you're still going to calculate everything that you would normally calculate with that movement. So any plus or minus to your breakaway, and then with your speed, whatever you already used up, and then if you have to half your speed out of hindering, you take what you had left of your speed and then half that. Like, we also haven't seen the rules for moving in and out of hindering. I don't foresee those changing, but hey, you never know. Objects are no longer hindering terrain. Anything can happen. So that might be a question that we can speculate at best right now. And then once we find out when other terrain is going to get changed, something that we can better answer once we have the whole rulebook in front of us. Any power you wish they changed and how? Leap climb.
make it good.
Oh my gosh. I would love to see leap climb work the way that they've been special powering it lately, which having it as a move and attack, if you only move X amount of squares, give an attack into it, or just add a static improved movement to it. Because right as it is right now, yeah, you can ignore the entire map, but you have to leap climb to do it. So I would love to see that power get changed to either include an attack or have the improvement powers actually added in somehow to just have that static, as you're always going to ignore that terrain regardless of whether or not they make it half good but passive. Yeah, have a static kind of movement. And then as part of your actual action, allow it to attack people, on higher elevation. I apologize, guys. I am the worst with my words today. I am stumbling all over my tongue.
Today.
This is why I don't normally do live. If you'll notice any hard cuts that happen during Dial It Up, it's because I can't talk. I got mentioned in a comment. Is that anything relevant to right now? Okay. No, it's not. Neither is that. Neither is that. Come on, people. Trying to check my Facebook for any questions, and it has nothing to do with what I'm actually doing right now. Okay, we didn't get any questions there. All right. If you guys have any more questions, put them in the live chat, put them on Facebook. I'm going to check to see if anything actually showed up on Twitter, because, hey, I put it up on Twitter today that I was doing this. So, all right. So it looked like there was a few that popped up here. Lastly, many countries lost their nationals for a while. That sucks. Honestly, that sucks. I saw your comment, and when you were mentioning on with it being due to low interest and low attendance, I feel really bad on that, because you were mentioning that you had like a lot of like more players than shows up for Canadian nationals. Which I don't know. We don't know much about how or why they why they took certain nationals away, why they gave extra ones out this year. We don't even know enough about our own Canadian nationals. Apparently the venue's changing. Who knew? Who knows? That still might not even be a thing. Hopefully that can change by next year. I guess it's set in stone for this year, but hopefully you guys can get it back and they start supporting you again for nationals. Sorry.
You're not part of the decision-making council on that one.
Yeah, sorry, we don't have anything to do with that one. Charge and running shot should be an interesting article. I don't even know if that might just be in passing. Like we've seen like penetrating psychic blast or flurry, or even charge has actually already been mentioned. We know what charge does. It does the exact same thing, just under new words. So
yeah, it lets you make it close as free.
Yeah, it's have movement, close attack is free, or close action is free. So that itself likely isn't going to get its own article unless they do something weird with running shot, which I don't foresee them doing if they didn't change charge at all. I think they did mention in charge that it does still ignores knockback though.
Yeah.
I am sad I don't think I can make Canadian nationals this year. Oh no, we will miss you, Nathaniel. We're excited for it. It is coming up. We're excited that we don't have to get a hotel for it. It is actually within traveling distance of our house, so we don't have to worry about a 6 or 7 hour road trip to get to Canadian nationals this year. It'll be like a 45-minute car drive. I am so nailing words tonight.
The best.
Montreal is easier for me to get to. I imagine. I'm not even going to pretend that I understand geography. I don't even know my own country. I am really, really bad with geography. So I will take you on your word, Nathaniel, if Montreal was easier for you to get to than Toronto.
There's a few border crossings there.
Yeah. So now it's been 2 years without anything. Boo. We used to have that problem. I'm really hoping that they do get these nationals pushed out a lot more countries. And I don't even understand the attendance problem or reasoning that they give you guys. yeah, it's a lot. It's hard for a lot of people when you don't live in the States. With WizKids himself being based out of the States, a lot of stuff happens there first. Yeah, a lot of stuff happens in the States first. So, and then they kind of branch out. I do know that like there was a huge list of nationals that they put out this year. I didn't go over each one because I was like, hey, Canadian nationals, that's all I care about.
There's an Australian one.
Apparently there's an Australian one. That's awesome. But yeah, so hopefully next year, even more nationals will get put out. No Meta Lab, but Amber, yay, my Monday is saved. Well, I'm glad I saved your Monday.
Metal Lab's now on Sunday nights at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern Standard Time.
Yes, for anybody that is missing Meta Lab tonight, it is now been moved to Sunday nights so that you can, get to see Jason again, and hopefully get the Meta Lab crew out on a get the Meta Lab crew out on a regular basis and actually getting Meta Lab running again. Dial It Up again. I'm getting a huge amount of content for you guys, which is talking about the new rulebook. And then once the new rulebook is actually in our hands, we'll have even more content to go into these and actual be able to play them out and show them out for you guys. Quick, Amber, quick, become a WizKids NECA CEO and give us our power. No.
Yeah, please, so that we can get that kind of salary at it.
Yeah, I would love all of the NECA mummies. Mummies. All the NECA mummies. Hey, we're just at this point we're just happy they know who we are. We have more unboxings coming in the future. Be nice to Jason.
What'd I do?
You're saying Jason Amber is better. I'm prettier. That's something.
That's true.
That is very possible. David is mentioning that I'll have to redo all the old Dial It Ups. Dial It Up itself will probably have to be archived and start.
Redacted.
We're gonna retcon Dial It Up. Yes. Yeah. I could go through, but at this point we have like 50 plus episodes of Dial It Up that are probably not going to be relevant anymore. And we're going to have content coming out our butts, and I'm excited because I've had such a dry spell being like, I don't know what to tell you guys about this game. This is exactly what I was waiting for. This is what I wanted. It's what I needed. It's my lifeblood. Yeah, so one of the announcements that came out of Gamma that just recently happened was that we are getting a Heroclix modern age compatible Star Trek away team set. So we're actually going to have the Star Trek figures, the captains, the people. It will be based off of the original series with William Shatner in Leonard Nimoy. We're going to get that run of Star Trek. The first set is going to be a full 5-figure booster, like 60, 70 figure set, which is ridiculous. A lot of people are excited for it. A lot of people are like, I was hoping this was going to be more exciting. As they were like, yeah, hey, we've got this big announcement for this new licensing contract that we have. A lot of people were speculating that it would come off of the Nickelodeon contract that they have for the Turtles. But it turned out to be Star Trek. And they're bringing Tactics back, I think. But that is a separate game that is not compatible. But yes, so we did have one before. The away team was based off of the J.J. Abrams movie. And it was other Clix. It was not compatible with modern age. It was considered a golden age. So you couldn't use your Spock and Kirk and Scotty to hang out with Superman. But now you can. I don't even know what to expect out of a set like that.
Klingons are bust.
Jason wants Klingons. I want tribbles. But yeah, so we're gonna get Star Trek Clix mixed in with our Turtles and our Marvel and our DC and our horror. That's what I'm looking forward to this summer. Give me a gravity feed of generic horror characters. Yeah. Basically, I just wish that Heroclix would go on. So I'm gonna ask you guys one more time for if you guys have any more questions, comments, whatever, whether it's pertaining to this episode or if you guys just wanted to ask me questions, I'm all cool with that too. I don't know how long we've been running so far. It's already been like an hour and a half, a little bit longer than last time, but we did have an extra article to go over this time. I'm going to try and do these every 4 or 5 articles that they do come out with. If they do keep coming out with these articles, we expect them to, because there's a lot of things that they do want to get the community feedback on before they be like, we're going to print, this is what we're doing, because I do believe they are hoping to have these rules in place by Mighty Thor, which is coming out in August. They did mention that was another thing that did come out of Gamma, was when they were advertising the Mighty Thor set, it is being advertised as having the new wording, the new sleek, condensed wording for special powers. So with that already being announced for Mighty Thor, and with Mighty Thor expecting, it does have a solicit for a starter set. We're hoping that is where these new rules will come in. So hopefully these rules articles keep coming, that we're getting good, feedback from the players, not too much pushback, so that whatever they have in place, they can just go to print with, and that, once we're done with all of our nationals and our worlds, that we're going to have a brand new game to play with after the summer. So as you guys watch me drink some more water. Okay, so we don't have any more questions in the chat right now, so I am going to say goodnight, because it is my bedtime, because I have 3 children that are going to wake me up early in the morning. So thank you guys for watching. We did have a fair amount of people actually watching with us. We had a lot of great people in the chat. So thanks everyone that put in a question, that was here to watch, that was here to chat, that was checking out Jason lounging on our couch playing Zelda. And we'll see you guys next time for another episode of Dial It Up. It will likely be another live episode like this to go over some even more rules articles. So good night, everyone.